Welcome, everybody. We are so pleased to have you join us for this installment of the new Sonic Field. This is our ongoing playlist and set of interviews with alumni from the New College of Florida for the New Music, New College series. I'm Professor Mark Dancigers, and I'm the director of this series. And I'm so pleased today to have the opportunity to speak with Erich Barganier. And Erich is a composer whose work has traversed a range of media and approaches. I had the chance to work with Erich while he was a student here at New College, so this is kind of a special moment for me. Very happy to have the chance to do this and share it with all of you. And so I'd like to start today by asking Erich to just tell us when you graduated from New College and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since then.
So first of all, hi, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate being here. I graduated in 2014. I think everything gets measured by your entrance date. So I was I guess even class of 2010 is how they measured it. So anywhere within that. Since I graduated, immediately after that, I did a Fulbright in Belarus, where I was working at a university teaching English to a variety of art students and musicians, while also doing a folklore project collecting some folk songs. Then maybe about a year or two after that project ended, I started my program at New York University, where I started a master's in music theory and composition, which I graduated in 2019 now. So since then, I have been in Montreal working with McGill University and a electronic music lab called IDNIL and an organization called Kermit, designing and I guess composing new works for electronic instruments and experimental designs, all kinds of things along those lines. So I've been up here since I think August 2019, so over a year now.
That's great. So working now currently on a research project at McGill University in Montreal, working on gesture-controlled instruments. That's really cool stuff. And I saw in your bio that some of your work has been recognized by the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, that was really, that was very unexpected. That was in, I think, 2018, I got the notification that I had been nominated for one of their general awards. So I went through that process. I didn't end up getting to the final rounds, making it through, but it was nice to go and just be recognized by whoever sponsored me through that. That was really wonderful. So it was a process. I have no idea what to expect in the situations, but yeah. It was good.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your work as a composer. So our first question is, how would you describe your work? And this is a hard question, I think, for any artist to answer. But I guess if you were kind of thinking of it as a snapshot of what you're doing right now, how would you describe what your interests are musically, compositionally, what you're up to, what you're drawn to?
When I try to think about that, I kind of get split into what I was doing before we had COVID and then what we're doing now, where we're living in a new reality where everything is done online and virtually. Generally speaking, the work that I tried to lean into usually involves really grand textures. I work within the art, like an art music context and the contemporary classical realm generally, is where I think that you would, if you had to go and put my music into a genre, that's where it would fit. But within that, I try to create sound worlds that feel very spontaneous, that don't feel like they've been rehearsed, like there's so many different kinds of classical pieces. When you tend to think about that, you tend to think about something that you have a performer that's been sitting in their practice room and they've been rehearsing the same few bars over and over to get it perfect. I try not to write music like that. I try to write pieces that either imbue the work with a sense of improvisation, whether it's direct or indirect, and trying to go and create some kind of sound world that sounds, even if it's not spontaneous, even if there is a set score, to have something that it feels like that to an audience. And in turn, I also have been writing a bunch of harsh might not be the right words to it, but I don't think pretty, it would be the opposite of whatever pretty is. So that's kind of where I've been at. But then when we have our new reality of COVID, that kind of had to shift a little bit, because with everything going online, there's all the virtual concerts that have been happening. So a lot of my output I also have in addition to doing classical composition, I also work a lot as with experimental electronics, just in general. Actually, through the work with Super Collider that I started with you, Mark, that has taken me on a really massive journey to where I am right now in that realm. So about half my output right now is working within Super Collider and writing. It wouldn't be classical, it's just like weird experimental electronic tracks. So I've had a few of those go out this year. I had an LP with some of them put out earlier this year on Belts and Whistles. So yeah, it's been a lot more, it still takes those same elements, but then I try to find ways where I can pare that down into a very singular, isolated sound world that would still work within the confines of where we are right now, where we can't have live performances. So
yeah, it's a good moment to be an electronic composer.
It seems that way.
Yeah. And by the way, so the album that came out that you put out this year, and yeah, you mentioned the label, and we were talking before we started recording the session today that that label is run by two composers, Layla Adu and Quinn Collins. And those are, I happen to know those composers. I was in school with them, and you connected with Layla at NYU. So it's been really great to see you kind of go into that world and make those connections out there and find ways of getting your music out. It's
been really fun, like especially upon moving to New York. I think I'm from Florida. I lived in Florida forever. Besides being in Eastern Europe for a little while, I had pretty much lived in Florida most of my life. So having gone to New York and then also finding all the ways in which everyone knows you too, Mark, it's been really fun to be like, oh, who did you study with in Florida, Eric? Oh, Mark Dancigers. Oh, it's Mark. So it's been equally fun on my end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Well, so yeah, and so you started to talk about this a little bit, but thinking about your New College time, was there a moment at New College that was especially important for you or transformational for you, looking back?
New College was really special in that regard, especially having gone to a larger university afterwards to see the comparison of how the two kind of foil each other. And for me, it was definitely a progression of things that led me to where I am because of New College. It's hard to pick maybe one specific moment that was transformative, because I could, like, just off the top of my head, name 4, but one of the last ones to happen that I think kind of brought me to where my music is right now was the DIY ensemble ISP that I did with you, where we made our own instruments, we created our own tracks. I don't remember if we used notation or not, but there was a lot of loose improvisation ideas that were really great. So that organic way of conceptualizing music was really influential in the way that I ended up developing my composition nowadays, where I still, like, despite having developed my background with counterpoint and all the technical ways you go about learning these things, still holding on to what New College presented within that ensemble. And I mean, pretty much the ethos of that lies at the heart of the program too, just being able to explore these worlds that you probably wouldn't be able to find in a traditional conservatory. So it creates, for me at least, something very, very unique, and definitely put me on the road to where I am right now.
Well, and you've taken that DIY approach, and really run with it. I mean, you've been just kind of keeping up with the music that you've created since you graduated. You've been sort of fearlessly experimental, I would say, and just kind of pushed yourself into new places. So yeah, that's a great thing to see. And I'm glad I think you brought that to New College, and then you found in some ways a home for it, and then you took it out beyond also.
I mean, I think that's definitely true. And even just, yeah, finding ways to make music that just sounds alive like that. I don't know in any other context where I could have even found that. So it was really, really special.
That's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. So let's talk a little bit about the track that you submitted for the playlist, which is Speaking in Tongues. This is really powerful music. Tell us a little bit about it.
The piece, it's funny. I think this is the longest I've ever worked on a piece, because I think from its beginning, so right now in its current form, it's a piece that's for 12 musicians. It originally started off as a piano quartet, and then it turned into a disc clavier piece for like a player piano, and now it's essentially something slightly smaller than maybe a chamber orchestra. But it was the result of trying to go and create an independent voice in my music. Prior to this, I was writing much more tonal pieces. This one, it's not atonal in the sense when you think of like classical atonal music like Schoenberg, where it's going to be very in your face, abrupt, and kind of murky in that same world. I wanted to try to find a way to marry that with what I admired about my teachers at the time. When I first started this, I was working with Julia Wolf, as a professor. So her influence came through a lot with this in the way that it developed, especially when the orchestration for 12 people came into play.
I hear her influence in this piece. Actually, it was one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was, oh, Erich has been studying with Julia Wolf. I mean, it's your own sound, but I can hear that approach.
Yeah, that it was actually really, really great, because I guess slightly before this, I was starting to experiment more with atonality and working with just getting out the realms of quote unquote pretty music, I guess. So that was one of the things I always butted heads with her, I think, most about is, can we get this to sound prettier, yes or no? And I was always on the no side. So I think this was kind of also coming to a compromise a bit, but it stretched out faster. I also worked on this piece later on with a professor named Robert Hanstein. I worked with him for a bit. So he also helped refine that and helped me come to terms even more with that sound world. But I mean, even beyond that, within the same period of time, discovering works like from the composers like Galina Ustvolskaya, or there's a Estonian composer, Velho Tormes, who does choir work, stuff like that, where it has those same feelings of like post-minimalism, but it's not in that post-minimalist world. So finding ways to navigate around that and kind of interact while also creating a piece that it's personal in nature too. Before this, I was writing works that maybe were a bit more conceptual, maybe they were a bit more theoretical. So this one was more autobiographical and coming from my own experience with being in proximity to Pentecostal churches and worship services with those. So, and trying to go and synthesize those memories into a piece.
Yeah, and you write about that in the program note, and that program note is published on this webpage. So go and check that out. It's knowing a little bit of the background, I think, gives an interesting way into this piece. So yes, go and listen to Speaking in Tongues, and it's really a worthwhile experience. So what's a upcoming project that you're looking forward to?
Something that I'm really excited about, which I don't think it's going to be online by the time this goes up, but sometime hopefully in October, I got a chance earlier this summer to work with the cellist Ashley Bathgate on a solo piece. So, and she's the cellist that She was formerly a Bang on a Can All-Star member. Right now, I think she's with 8th Blackbird. So I wrote a piece for her as part of a festival with this like an artist colony or an artist residence program called Arts, Letters, and Numbers in upstate New York. So sometime, hopefully in October, that's going to go online, and I'll be able to go and post that on my own site as well for anybody interested in looking at that later. But it has a similar atmosphere to the Speaking in Tongues track that's posted here.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, she's a wonderful performer. So yeah, we'll look forward to that. And I think you mentioned just now, but is there a good way that we can learn more about your work?
Sure. I have the best way and the most direct way would be through my own personal website, bargoniermusic.com, which I think might also be linked in the description of this. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Besides that, I'm on Twitter. It doesn't happen as much, but I'm on there sometimes. Or Instagram. You can find me on Instagram now, which is weird. I haven't used social media ever until like a year ago to start. As a result of maybe like COVID stuff, I'm now on there, and I'm still getting used to it.
I think we're all still getting used to it.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, so Erich Barganier, this has been such a pleasure. We're so glad to have the chance to feature some conversation with you, and we're so glad to present this work on our site. And thank you so much for making the time for us today.
Well, no problem. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to more.
Yeah.